killings in 2021. So we can welcome Reverend Rejon.
Thank you. I want to give a friend of mine, another minister of record on death row, just a few minutes. She has a message from the person she serves on federal death row, Rejon.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you to all the speakers. My name's Laura Lasertmer. I'm a minister of record for Rejon Taylor, who's currently on federal death row in Terre Haute. And he sent me this today and then called to say he worried it was too dark. And I promised I would tell him that it's not, that it is important we see the big context and know that our work is not only to end the death penalty, but to make it so that no one ends up there in the first place. So he writes, as a man is slated for homicide by the state of Indiana, my feet plod heavy in this same state toward my own demise on federal death row. As I think of this man, this flesh and blood human being, my heart skies collapse into a black hole of questions. Does he, like me, vacillate between a desire to continue to exist in extreme deprivations and a desire to hasten his own poignantly beautiful tragedy? Does he, like me, wonder about the absurdity of people protesting his looming death a little too late, though he needed them most in childhood, when the threads of his life started fraying, unraveling from state-sanctioned trauma in his environment? If we as a society fail to embrace our children, including the marginalized and disadvantaged, when they grow older, they will burn society down to feel its warmth. And your protests at state capitals or wherever you hold them will continue in vain, the root issue still unaddressed. Rejon.
Thank you. Well, I've been on this campaign for a long time, and sometimes it seems like it's never going to end, but I think it will. I want to say thank you to the Roman Catholic people here today. I owe them a great debt of gratitude because the only reason I am who I am is because of Roman Catholics, Phil Berrigan and Elizabeth Callister and Helen Prejean, and later on, Helen's the one that got me involved in this work. But way back in 1979, Phil Berrigan changed my life. I would have supported the death penalty. I grew up in a very right-wing religion and had no thoughts that the death penalty was wrong. But Phil made a pacifist out of me and changed my direction. So I owe the Catholic tradition a great debt of gratitude. I want to send a message to Governor Holcomb. The lame duck governor now, you know what a lame duck governor, like our lame duck president was when he killed a bunch of people, 13. The only person in over 100, the only president in 100 years to carry out an execution is a lame duck president. You've got to go all the way back to Grover Cleveland for a lame duck president execution. And Donald Trump, we now have a man coming on January 2nd of next year, January 20 of next year. We will have a man with 34 felonies, found guilty of rape. What else has we got? I mean, it's unbelievable in the White House. And he has promised the empty death row. We got a governor who wants to go out as a lame duck governor. It's hard to say. With an execution, the first one in 14 years, 15 years now. And I have a challenge to Governor Holcomb. Your Republican Party wants to put the 10 Commandments in every classroom in this nation. And they want to dress it up a little bit. They changed the 6th commandment, or 7th commandment to 6th or 7th. I think it's 6th. The father over here could probably help me on that. Unitarian Universalists kind of forget things every once in a while. But I want to challenge them, because they change it. In the classrooms all over the South, it doesn't say thou shalt not kill, it says thou shalt not murder. As if it makes it okay to kill a murderer. But my mom gave me a beautiful Bible when I decided to go to seminary, which she thought meant cemetery where you bury your faith, and indeed it was. But that old Bible I still use, and in that old Bible, it says, "Thou shalt not kill." I wonder if that hangs in the governor's office. I wonder if Governor Holcomb will put that in his bedroom and have it there for the next how many years, and remember that he called for an execution of a man 7 days before we celebrate the birth of the Prince of Peace. 7 days before the birth of Jesus, Governor Holcomb is going to have a person killed in cold-blooded murder. He should at least have the courage to go to the death chamber with him. He should at least know what it's like, because I know what it's like. Governor Holcomb can stop this. I hope every one of you and every person you know will write him a personal letter. And I'll tell you, I know politicians. They pay attention a little bit to phone calls because it's always going to an answering machine. They pay attention to petitions because it's easy to sign a petition. They pay most attention to a written letter personally to them. And every politician running for office will tell you that. Because if you take the time to sit down and write a letter, you give a damn about what you're writing about. And they know that. And they know you'll act on it. So tell everybody you know. And I'll be encouraging my congregation. I'm going back to preach there in Bloomington. I'll be encouraging every member of that church to sit down and write a letter. Stop this execution. Wow. Someone said a while ago about this is a state-sponsored murder. This is a murder. We met a woman when Helen Rejon called for the National Coalition to come together in Washington, D.C., and they sent me, the Quakers actually sent me there, by the way, because they had bought tickets for it and then couldn't get anybody to go, so they asked Glenda and I to go and paid our way out there. And Helen Rejon, she made me promise I'd preach an abolition sermon every year in every church they served. But, and Helen Rejon's one of my heroes for sure. But my brother met a woman in Georgia. A woman came to a meeting that they were in. This was in Washington, D.C. when we were there. There was a woman there who had 2 sons killed. One was killed in gang violence. She had 2 death certificates. One was the gang violence, it was cause of death, homicide. And she had a death certificate from the state of Georgia who executed her other son, and the cause of death was homicide. It's just plain murder. Yep. Albert Camus, the great French philosopher, once said, "You cannot imagine, no one could imagine, a more cold-blooded, premeditated murder than to take a person, put them in a solitary cell for year after year after year where they cannot hurt anyone, and on a certain day, at a certain hour, at a certain minute, take them out of that cell, march into the cell, and kill them in cold blood. There is no other premeditated, cold-blooded murder like that in the world. None. It's true. When the executions were taking place in Terre Haute, after this, I had to miss a few because of an injury, and I went back. When the last 3 were announced, I asked a lawyer friend to find out if they had lawyers. And we found out they didn't. Sister Barbara went with the woman who was executed. I have a Sunni Muslim friend who went with the Muslim person who was executed. And I volunteered to go with Corey Johnson. I found out he had been in solitary confinement for 29 years without a visitor. He went in at the age of 19 years old. 29 years in solitary. I've been in solitary. I know what it like. It drove me crazy in no time. And I asked the lawyer, I said, "Can I talk to this man? Am I going to talk to, is he able to communicate after 29 years without a visitor in solitary?" He said, "You're going to meet one of the most amazing human beings you've ever met in your life." And I've had dinner with the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu. And I tell you, Corey Johnson was that quality of human being. He couldn't read or write, but in 29 years of solitude, he learned what it was to be a human being. And he couldn't, as I said, I had about 25 to 30 hours with him before he was executed. I visited him quite a few times. He was called the gentle giant on the road. No one had ever heard him raise his voice. When he was convicted and sentenced to death, There just happened to be a black middle school class that had come to see how the court works. I don't know if the judge knew it. I don't know if he had him in there for this, or maybe he did it because he wanted black kids to see it. I don't know. But when he was told he was sentenced to death, he said to Corey, "Do you have anything you want to say?" And Corey said, "I want to speak to these children." And he turned to them at the age of 19, turned to these kids after being told he's going to die in the death chamber and said, "Do not follow my path. This is where it ends." And there's TV news interview, film of those children coming out of that courtroom, and they said, "What did you think?" And every one of them said, "That man in there, he's black like us. We listened to him." That's the quality of a 19-year-old man who couldn't read or write, who was raised by gang because he was abandoned by his mother, who was an heroin addiction, and killed 7 people, or helped kill 7 people in a gang war in Richmond, Virginia. My first wedding, I said, if you'd have gone to Iraq and killed 7 Iraqi citizens, I'd get you a medal and a commendation. Yeah. Because the president likes it when you kill his enemies. I can't tell you, I don't want to describe what it's like to stand in that death chamber. I don't know how long it was. Every minute was an eternity. Corey dictated his last words to me on the morning of his execution. He was smiling. I was torn apart. I was afraid. He wasn't afraid. I said, he said, "I don't think I could give my last words. Would you do it?" He dictated them to me. And I taught Corey the African tradition that you don't die until your name is forgotten. And the first thing he said, "Don't worry about me. I'm at peace. Remember these names." And he named every one of the victims in their crime, every one. And he said, "I wanted to say I was sorry to their family all a long time ago. I didn't know how. I hope this brings you peace." And when I went to that death chamber, I had told him I wanted to read his words for him because he couldn't read. And he strapped on a cross-shaped gurney. You know, it looks like a cross. It really does. Well, Corey was my Christ. He strapped down his head. The only thing he can move is his fingers and his toes. And he'd been there for hours waiting for the decision. And I came in, and I said a prayer, and I asked to read his words. And they said, "You can't read it, he has to read it." I said, "He cannot read. And besides, he can't even hold the paper." The man who was running the thing wouldn't let me read that. When he finally, after I don't know how long of an eternity it was that the courts decided, and a man came in the back door and said, "There are no impediments. There are no impediments." What a way to say, "You're okay, it's okay, go ahead and kill him." There are no impediments. And when he stepped to the microphone, the leader of the execution team, and shouted out like a carnival biker, "Let the execution begin." The victim's family stood and cheered like it was a Super Bowl. And I'm standing there wondering, how can this happen? If they had heard Corey's name, if they had heard their children's name, their sons' names and daughters' names from Corey's mouth and his repentance, I think they might have had some healing. But that cheering didn't last long after the death was over. That was not healing. That was bizarre. I still suffer from claustrophobia for the first time in my life. I suffer from a moral injury. And I again want to challenge Governor Holcomb. If you intend on committing first-degree, premeditated, cold-blooded murder, have the courage to go watch it done. And call me when you come out. I'll be glad to sit with you and pray for forgiveness. I want you people to understand that we will stop this, to believe we will stop it, and work like crazy to do so. Sing with me. We shall overcome. We shall, you can sing it, overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. I'm going to say something to the pro-life people, because evangelical pro-life people put this president in office we're going to have. I want to say something to you. When I taught in criminal justice at IU years ago, when you do surveys about people's beliefs and choices, the number one marker that every criminal justice person will tell you is the marker that guarantees you're pro-death is that you're pro-life. And that is an insult to the many Catholic people and many religious people I know who are pro-life. It's an insult because there's absolutely a contradiction in terms. We have to point that out again and again and again. If you're pro-life, be pro-life. If you're a pro-life governor, be a pro-life governor. If you're a pro-life president, be a pro-life president. Or don't tell me you are. I believe one of these days this will stop, because I believe our young people will run much further, much longer, much stronger than we have run. But it's going to take them help, and we're going to have to help them. Go in peace, write to governor, stand up, be there, be a voice to stop this absolutely insane practice of state-sponsored killing. Thank you.